video. I prefer audio. So, I mean, video, what I see from most videos is people talking to camera, and it's not very entertaining to watch, but it's good to listen. Is that a wide angle?
This would, catch both of us in some way. We should maybe have a microphone like somewhere here, but
It would be better, but it will still work, I think. That's a neat little gadget. So where did you get that? Is that made, where's that made? In the States or somewhere?
I don't know where it's originated from, but I bought it in HMB, B&H in New York.
Okay.
You familiar with that? No.
No.
It's one of the biggest photo shops in the world, I guess.
Okay. So if you're into photography, you'd know about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would say like 95% of these cameras is selling on the web.
Got it.
But I went there because it's a really cool shop. It's tons of use. It's been there forever, and it's tons of use, and they have different kind of slots, and you go into these slots and you order this stuff, and they put something in some green box, and this green box will go away to the caches machines, and it's really neat. So, great to meet you, as I told you.
Equally.
And what were you here for the Ragan Conference?
The Ragan Conference.
How much of your business is about speaking?
Not as much as it used to be. I used to do a lot as a main part of the business, but last couple of years I've not really done that. And one reason is that I don't really see anything new being presented. A lot of conferences about how to do this, how to do that in public relations and communication.
Yes.
Social media features big, but I don't see much being talked about that is taking it to another level. A lot of it is still focusing on the what. A lot of it is still focused on stuff that everyone is talking about.
Couldn't you add that kind of the new stuff?
No, I pay attention to talking directly to companies, just getting on with some of the consulting stuff that I'm doing.
Okay. But why did you attend to this Ragan Conference?
Because I know Mark and Shell Holtz, who's the chap I do the podcast with that we do. He and I are both presenting today. So, and this conference was definitely one of the difference from the speakers.
It was?
There's some new stuff being done, some different stuff being talked about related to social media and communications. Some good case studies being presented, and a good mix of not just communicators and journalists here too, and some companies talking who I've never heard speak before. And they may be talking about the things other companies talk about, but it's their case study. So we heard yesterday from, for instance, one company struck me from the US, a basketball team in Phoenix in Arizona, how they're using social media. Okay. And today we'll hear from Disney on how they're using social media. Okay. And those are two companies I've not heard talk before. So that interested me.
Is it because they're telling you something that you haven't heard before?
From their point of view, how they're doing it. Because you've got kind of like 80% of all this is the same for everyone. You've got 20% that's unique to that individual company. Or they're doing something that makes you think, oh, that'll work in our business, or I could think of a client who that would be interested to hear about. And unless companies like this either publish the information themselves or do something like this, you never normally hear about it in the detail.
So, what did it say? For an example.
Well, for example, the Phoenix Sun struck me the sheer scale of how they've embraced social channels to build community and engage with the fans who love the basketball team. And this is in the United States, so cultural differences to Europe, for instance. People tend to be extremely open in how they communicate their love for a brand. That's different to much of Europe. So seeing how that works in that context is quite interesting.
There was a basket team, or was a basket club, or an
basketball team. Yeah.
Basketball team.
It's big. I mean, that kind of sport activity is huge in the United States. So to use these channels to provide the fans with the means to engage with their heroes, and for them to articulate all of this, they can do competitions and so forth. They are active in every social channel you can imagine. They're doing something, and they've been doing it for some time.
So I guess, so what you're telling me is that this team, they were using the players to be a part of the engagement, right?
That's part of it, but it's more building community. Fans talk to each other. They provide the platforms to enable that as part of their brand. Okay. So they encourage people particularly the ones who are passionate, to encourage the passion to share their belief in the brand with other fans as well, and they provide the platforms to do that. Plus they're part of engagement. They're on contests, they're constantly engaging with people in ways that appeal to those people. That's not uncommon with many organizations today, but hearing the story specifically of this team yesterday was actually quite enlightening. So, and then, hearing what people like Dell are doing in the Netherlands in particular. I mean, I know a lot about Dell, but not what they're doing here. And so other companies talking too, hearing about the Huffington Post, how they approach the web blogging from a journalistic point of view. That's interesting. So I've not seen anyone else doing this kind of event recently in Europe, so it was part of the appeal.
But if you taking this basketball team for example, I heard a lot about that. From one point of view, I can hear Mark Zuckerberg's voice in my head. You can't build a community; you can just be a part of an existing community, right?
Is that what he said?
Yeah, he said so. He's
wrong.
No, what he said was when Rupert Murdoch, as far as I can understand, Rupert Murdoch said to him, "Oh, Mark, please tell me how can I build such a great community that you did?" And Mark said, "Yeah, you can't."
Well,
why not? We're the biggest media company in the world.
Yeah.
Then you can't build a community. You can be part of one, and you can make. I think he said you can make an existing community to grow and flourish. That's what Mark said.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But he's talking about something entirely different. He's talking about building, if you will, the buildings and the physical elements of the village, and then people come along and populate that space. So he's creating a space to do that, and he's providing the means for others to do certain things. But that's huge scale, it's mega scale. Here you're talking about something that's related to a specific brand of something that is real. People are engaged with specifically to do with that, not really much else. Whereas Facebook, for instance, is like a village where people of all walks of life will congregate or not, and they'll talk about this or that or not or whatever the case is. It's very, very wide. Of course you can build community. If you provide, in my opinion, a mixture of things, including thinking about the basketball team is a good example, which is very typical. The means for people to engage with you when they want to. The fact that you then become part of their engagement procedure, so you respond to them. It's not just responding, you initiate things as well, but you are constantly interacting with the community that is beginning to grow, for which you've created the means for that to happen. You then offer them terrific content.
But the interesting part, I still don't think, what is a community? It's probably more than one people that is engaging among one topic.
Depends. I mean, think about the podcasts that I do. We have a terrific community. We have listeners. We get currently averaging around 30,000 downloads a month on the show. And we have a community, particularly on FriendFeed. Remember FriendFeed, the social network no one remembers? It's a hidden niche, but that's where the community likes to congregate. So we've got 400 people in that community who talk about matters related to what we talk about on the podcast. So it's very specific. They don't talk about, the Kardashians TV show in America. They don't talk about politics in the UK. None of that. It's purely to do with communication, technology, and business, which is what the community is all about. So we created the place, and the conversation happens whether Shell and I are there or not.
But when you're using word as place, using words as topics, using word as members, using words as platforms like FriendFeed, so you can still, discuss what a community is. Is that people among a topic, or is it a place, or what is it? Really,
all of those
what
things.
I mean?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't see this as a.
Who did create that? You didn't create the platform. You didn't create the topic.
We provided the means.
Okay, so
that's one other way of defining it.
You provided what?
The means for them to grow. We encourage that. Facebook in that sense is the same. They provide the means, they encourage that. But the community then builds around issues or topics or interests they have. and we encourage that. And we interact directly with them on those topics. Facebook doesn't do that, for instance. So, in fact, the friend feed doesn't do that. They provide the platform, let's say. So we provide the platform within the platform that's specific to our little niche. And we encourage those interactions. We don't direct it, we don't shape it. It's now taken a life that's owned by the community. So if Shell and I were hit by a bus tomorrow and didn't do the podcast anymore, I think the community would still continue anyway. So the content's there, the desire to interact with other people is there, and that's a basic human function of many people who like to connect with other people. So like in any community of 400, you've got a hard core of people who are constantly there, like in any community. So, you know, in that sense, it's no different to what people do in social networking places like Facebook. So,
and as a matter of fact, what I do believe, because this has been existing for years and years and years, these kind of communities, right? But the new tools, the new platform, the new services, it makes it much easier to creating this engagement between these people. And you know, I've been on tons of conferences and read so many reports and blah blah stuff. And what we can see is that most of these companies are starting with employees, right? Or the stakeholders and the stakeholders, because you already have some you know, common engagement among one of your topics, your own company, your own products, and there is more or less you know, some kind of engagement among these topics, right? So it's very easy to start with your own employees, and that's what we hear companies also do, right? And that's a great way to do it as well. I guess they start with the existing, you know, players and members and you know, team, you know, fans. And
yeah,
stuff
you have to. When we started it, and using us as an example, is this typical of everyone? I don't know. But we started it, and if no one had joined, we would have continued anyway. So we would have been the community.
So you're passionate.
Yeah, we would use it as a place to have a chat that it complements the other means we taught. But we would do it as anyone who's trying to build community would do, in a way that is geared to attract the interest of others. So we'd be talking about it elsewhere, come and visit the community as people tend to. And the bets are extremely high that, you know, at least 2 people would come and join in. So it would have succeeded, I'm pretty sure. So you see that with some of the places you find online within Facebook. Look at Google Plus, for instance, the social network that everyone is saying is going to fail. I don't believe that for a second. It may not be what people think it ought to be, but that's nothing. I doubt Google is having sleepless nights over that. Their plan for that, they talk about things like embedding you into all of Google's services, an identity service. Well, maybe it will. Who the hell knows? I don't know. No one knows other than Google. It's just everyone's
not even Google, I would say.
Well, I suspect they do, but
they have an ambition. Right?
You've got everyone else with opinion. That's all you're reading right now. So, although I must admit I've observed, which I was tweeting about this yesterday. You know, I'm sensing it seems like a slowdown. I noticed in my stream less posts from people. Is it because it was Easter? Is it because people aren't there? I have no idea. So this morning I'm looking at Google Plus, and there's hundreds of posts. So maybe, who the hell knows?
What do interest me, I'm not a guy, one of the developers for Google Plus in New York last week or a couple weeks ago, and he was one of the developers for Google Plus, and it's very clear they are competing with Facebook.
They say they're not.
They say?
Yeah. Google's official statement is that this is not a competitor.
Official, but they do. Right?
Maybe
what do you
do.
think? You know, but when it comes to if you're comparing Facebook with Google Plus, for instance, from my perspective, Facebook, that's my friends and family still. You know, all my friends and family. But I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. With this communication and the new people are doing, so on. So if you look at my Twitter the people that follow Twitter, it's mostly business people. The business is my engagement, my passion, it's my work, and it's mostly people like you, right? I'm still engaged, and some of them follow me as well. So and if you're looking at Google Plus, it's more or less the same people. And I do think at least the people I'm engaged with there, they're discussing their topics, their their profession topics more than what we do in Facebook.
Agree. It's more of a professional
it happens
crowd.
to be there. But I don't know what it will be. But when I'm listening to Google Plus, not the official version, but it's with the people I meet, they are talking about Google Plus as something that is more similar to Facebook. They, for example, Hangouts. They would like you to, hang out with your friends and family on this.
Well, they provide you the method to do that.
Yeah.
And subtle encouragements to do that, just as Facebook does with some of the stuff that they do. Are they competing with Facebook? Well, if you look at it in terms of attention and the way you spend time, well, I guess. I mean, I spend time in Google Plus more than I spend in Facebook, but I never really was into Facebook anyway. I find Google Plus a more interesting place. I find the way to interact with it using the site itself far more engaging than with Facebook. And one of the big appeals to me, for instance, is being able to edit your updates. I mean, for spelling mistakes and crap like that I'm always making. You can't do that in Facebook. And the way in which you can group people into circles. So you have, I must have probably about 12 circles. Which there are 2 I pay attention to all the time because they're people I've chosen to pay attention to them. I've then got the big one which I look at now and again, which is the stream. So you can't do that in Facebook very easily. It's very simple to do in Google Plus.
Yeah, but that's the starting point for Google Plus.
Sure. So as you say, it may well be that in reality, yes, they are competing.
Are you posting to different kind of circles as well?
It depends on what I'm posting.
Yeah.
My default is public, open. You can't do that on Facebook. So everything I post on Google shows up in search results.
I have a gut feeling though that people are just publishing to all the circles. Anyway,
maybe they are.
They don't choose because they're used to.
I remember when I started, which was before it was launched publicly, the default was private. Your post. The default. Yeah, when I started. Maybe they changed that now. I don't know. But I make it public. And in fact, when you change the who you're publishing to, that becomes the default for the next time you use it. So it stays that way. But it makes sense to me to be in a walled garden in terms of where you are, but being able to publish your content publicly outside of your garden, and you can't do that in Facebook. So, and that's not a criticism, by the way, that's the way Facebook is. In which case, if you don't like that, well, don't be there. If you prefer that to Google Plus, well, you'll be there. So, if they're competing with Facebook, if that means they want to attract people away from Facebook, I do not believe they will succeed, but I do not believe that's their goal at all. So there's room for more than one place.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe, and probably only Google could do this. They have deep pockets and locations. If they were another entity trying to set up a rival social network, then they don't have deep pockets, and this is probably costing a lot of money to get this going. But if their ultimate goal is to, if you look at the redesign that happened yesterday, which I quite like.
It just happened.
Yeah, well, that's Google, typical. I mean, that's how they do it. And Google, everything is beta. It's not.
I love that
philosophy. Yeah,
it's not another version. It just happens all the time.
There's no manual. There's nothing. You ask people how to do stuff, or you just try it out. So this is a geeky place.
It's a little link, with the old version, if you would like to go back to.
That's right. So this is not a place for your average person who doesn't know much about tech, who just wants to go into a comfy place and chat with folks. That's Facebook. So Google Plus is more of a bit of a Wild West area in that regard. But the community is very different to Google Plus. They're more professional, more geeky. So I see very little conversation in my circles that is as personal as you find on Facebook. That family. I don't see as much of nowhere near as much of that, and that suits me perfectly. If I want that, I'll go to Facebook. I've got family there, cousins and people there.
Where's your family?
All over the place. Yeah, well, they're on Facebook, which is where you tend to find them. But I think there's room for these places, and you hear stories about MySpace is about to be resurrected again. In which case, if there's a community wanting to go there, then it'll work. If not. If it doesn't reinvent itself in a way that appeals to people, it won't succeed. Well, give it a chance. It may well be the next hot thing. Who knows?
But isn't it interesting? We say that it's room for more places than Facebook or whatever. From a company perspective, there's a lot of pages now, right? You remember in the 90s, you're starting with the homepage. There was a media.
The good old days. Yeah,
one media called Internet. You have to be there, otherwise you're nobody. So you create your homepage, and then you have the newsroom on your homepage, and then suddenly a blog page, and then suddenly a Facebook page, and then Twitter page, LinkedIn page, Foursquare page, Quora page, No, you're not allowed to quora. No, you know that's one of the only more or less.
Yeah, I mean these.
But then a lot of pages, and then you have to figure out, okay, where are my audience, and where will they meet me, and it's hard, to.
You can't spend time on all of these places, but I mean that sort of behaviour is not common to most people. I find. If I look at my Google profile, Google knows that I'm in about 60 different places. I'm never in 50 of them. And there's some of them I think, I remember that. I joined there like 5 years ago. I've not been back since, but it shows me as still being there. You tend to experiment with these things. Most people don't do that. And for a business point of view, you definitely wouldn't want to be doing that without a clear plan as to is it going to help you achieve what you're trying to achieve from a business point of view. So you talk about the 90s, but now we're in a situation where a third of the planet is wired, of which that third, most of, let's call it the developed world, is there. All of Europe and North America. And so the next growth area is coming in Asia, because they use these technology tools very differently to how we use them. Is that going to influence how we connect with people? Who the hell knows? But it may well do. Mobile is going to be massive. And so now you've got, you talk about the evolution of websites to blogs and to all these other tools and services. That's come about as awareness has grown, as the infrastructure has developed. I mean, look at what you can do now with a mobile phone, where we're sitting here, for instance, and I just felt my phone vibrate, and that's downloading something that's over the air. And I'm not even thinking about it. That's coming in at a huge speed. No, I'm on Wi-Fi. I'm on Wi-Fi here.
Even that cost on this hotel, which makes me angry. Coming in here, you have to pay for.
It's 10 euros a day. I like the model. I think it's 5 euros an hour or 10 euros for a day. So you buy a day, yeah. And this is again another of the things that will work itself out sooner or later, because things like hotels or the public places that charge you the internet, the model is quite clear. They can make a good bit of money on this. The time is approaching.
Or you can lose guests.
Well, the time is approaching where there will be alternatives. That's the thing. This is a captive market, so they will charge.
People are choosing cafes and hotels if they have.
Yeah, I mean, I look at how much I'm sure mobile operators must be losing out by people like me, for instance, who have my phone enabled to not allow data roaming. And I've even got the setting in my account to make sure it doesn't happen when I'm on a roaming network. The data charges are outrageous from the mobile operators. Yeah. I mean, it's not uncommon. I hear of people who get home and find there's a bill for £2,000, and they think, my God, because I didn't realise. And that is wrong. And in Europe, the EU have taken steps to fix that, because the mobile phone companies are not going to voluntarily. It's a good business, a good revenue model. But that's part of the evolution of it all. Where it'll become ubiquitous and it'll be free.
I just arrived when I come to New York last week. You're busy. It took like 3 hours, and I got a message. Oh, you how do you say? You increased your limits for the data cost, and I forgot this data room.
Yeah, I know.
$100 in 3 hours. You have so many push-ups and push.
That's right. You've got stuff going on in the background to update this and update that. It's
but when it comes to mobile and the web, what do you think about the web application versus other applications? Sometimes you're talking about, will the web just disappear for the benefit of other kind of applications like iPhone applications and so on?
You see what I mean? It's a very good question. Are we poised at a moment where there is, when you hear talk about the post-PC era, you hear talk about when the mobile era, which I believe is likely, you've got new devices coming onto the marketplace that are getting smaller and far more powerful, costs are dropping, infrastructure is spreading, a lot of it is mobile, and some of the projections you see, the trends that people are predicting, is it's all going to be about mobile. Now that doesn't talk about the web disappearing. So the web, to me, it's almost like the kind of roads and streets that are there for you to navigate or use as you will. So I don't see the web going away. I think the way we interact is becoming simpler, where you don't think about the device or a web page. You just think about the content. Yes. I want to go to X, or I want to get that. And that's how you're now thinking. You're not worried about archaic commands you've got to type on a machine like I remember those days. A lot of it still now. It's tap, stroke, tap tap. It's all touch and that kind of thing. So that enables you to, or that influences how software is developed in the future. But to most people, I think it's becoming even more transparent, meaning, or rather, it's becoming more the fact that you are concentrating on your content and less on the device and the means to get at the content, which is still the case now. You've got to run an app, you've got to load up something, you've got to install this. You become far more automatic, but that requires further development in the infrastructure. The business models have got to be fixed. And here I'm talking about a place like here in the Netherlands. How's that going to be in other countries where they're skipping the current technology and going straight to the next generation technology, which we don't have yet either. So you find that in Asia, like India, look at China. So, I mean, China, this massive walled garden. I mean, they've got social networks. They've got more people than Facebook in. That's just in China. And imagine that suddenly spread out everywhere. So there's things like that where you can almost define chaos theory by this. What happens in China, is that going to affect what someone in North America is going to do? So all these are predictions and opinions by people. In the meantime, you are observing a constant evolution of how people are using the technology and the tools to connect with other people, how they're sharing ideas. And I mean, I look at this conference as a very good example, a very simple basis where you've got now the norm in most conferences, people on a stage presenting information or sharing content with you in the audience, and everyone in the audience has got a device where they're sharing their opinions of all of that with their communities online. In as many places you can imagine exist in the world that's got an internet connection. Those people are retweeting, they're re-commenting, they're adding their own comments to all this. That enriches an event in my view, but it changes how you see the sharing of knowledge, and indeed it affects business models. You know, if you've got a conference where people are paying money to physically go there, and yet it's openly sharing all of that content with people around the world, well, that's the new reality. You can't stop that, other than try and shut off the internet, which means no one's going to come to your conference. So you better get used to it. That's the new reality. Content is free, quote unquote. So meaning that much of it you don't pay money for. You're paying in different ways. Your attention, your time. So I mean, I do a lot of things where there's no monetary reward. And sometimes I say to myself, you know, you're nuts doing this, and you need to pay the bills. But rewards come in different ways, and bartering is becoming more common again. That old method of exchanging a good for a good or a service for service. So, you know, I have done that quite a bit, and probably do more of it, where I'll do something for someone, and they will then do something for me that otherwise I'd be paying for. So we both benefit. I think governments have to address that because there's tax implications and all this kind of stuff. We'll all be like Italy otherwise, you know, broke soup, you know. But so it's an interesting time we live in.
So I can hear this is your passion, right, as well?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I remember I must have built 3 computers back in the late 80s, early 90s. These were the days when there weren't a store you could just go to and buy a part. Yeah. A specialist kind of place. It cost a fortune as well, but it was fun to do. So
there's a place for another book from Neville Hobson.
I'm terrible at writing books. Yeah, I'm terrible at writing books. I don't have the patience. One thing I learned from the book I co-wrote with Shell Holtz, who did the podcasting book 5 years ago, was unlike Shell, who can, you know, multitask and write 3 chapters simultaneously in a busy airport with all the noise. I had to stop everything to concentrate on that. Okay. And so if I were to write a book, I'd have to take 6 months off. I can't afford to do that yet. So yeah, I have a few ideas on stuff I'd like to share. So I may do it some other ways. I may write blog posts and just do it all for free.
All of the people I met, you know, like Chris Ragan, Barry Solis, and guys like that, they're writing books just because of marketing, you know.
Oh, I know that, and I see that in North America. I mean, good luck to those guys. I mean, it seems to me sometimes that the pinnacle of some people's aspirations is to get to book deal and publish the book. There are some very good books, particularly Brian Solis, I have to say. But he's a very smart fellow. But doesn't kind of turn me on, that kind of thing. Doing an audio of some kind, that would be more interesting to me.
They are very different though, because I read most of the Brian Solis books and other like Chris Brothers books as well, or many others like yours. But Brian Solis is very academic in his language and his thought and so on. If you're looking for Chris Brogan's literature, for example, it's more of a, how to say, spiritual, you know, it's ongoing, it's more...
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe you're right with Brian. I mean, I find his content eminently readable. It's got depth.
Yeah.
It is prescient in a lot of what it's saying, and I think many things that have happened have proven his predictions to be pretty on the spot. So he's worth paying attention to. So he writes good stuff. His content is very good, not just his books, his blog, and everything he shares. So he's someone I pay a lot of attention to. And over here we don't have any rock stars in Europe in the same way as there are in North America, which I mean, hey, that's Hollywood land, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these guys are rock stars in that sense, which is terrific. I mean, they help raise awareness of a lot of this stuff. And when you're out talking to companies who are still very skeptical, that's helpful. When they can point to the huge quantity of case studies they talk about, the evidence they show, and even the stuff that goes wrong. I mean, for instance, I'm reading a book right now written by two guys in the UK that is a list of failures with social media that companies have made over the last 6 years. And it started as a PowerPoint deck on SlideShow, and they've developed it into a book. And all these case studies are out there on the web, but now there's a collection in one place with opinion and an analysis of what went wrong. It's very handy, and I'm reading the Kindle version. So I'm actually doing a review of this book, which sometime in the next couple of weeks I'll do that review. It's really useful to have that kind of thing. So you've got people. If you look on Amazon UK right now, you'll find at least 40 books on social media. Which one are you going to choose? I mean, they're all jostling for positioning and your opinion. So what your friends think about them is becoming increasingly important. So the recommendation function of it is becoming important. But who do you trust? When you hear stories about TripAdvisor with fake reviews of hotels, who do you trust these days other than your friends? Well, I think the answer to that's different for most people. So you end up trusting people that you either know or others you know of them, or you take more risks. That's what I tend to do. I mean, I tend to make decisions based on stuff I encounter, combine that with what some other people say that I pay attention to, not necessarily friends, and then you make the decisions. And a lot of people can't do that yet. But that's okay. I mean, there's room for all of this.
Before you go, may I ask you a last question here? All this. I hate the word social media. I think the whole web has been social. We are social, and we're using the web, and luckily the web just turned into a social space, right? So every page more or less has some social features, right? So which means there's no social media. It's a social web, more or less, I would say. But what I will say is that has made are making the company and all of us more, transparent and more. We have to be more authentic. We have to, go down to the core of ourselves and our businesses, right, in some way. Which means we have to take care of it, corporate social responsibility, and all that kind of thing. Which, when we're talking about books, I got really inspired once again by Jim Collins' books, Built to Last and Good to Great and stuff. Have you read these books?
No, I haven't, but I know of them. Yeah.
So I think if you're talking about company and the communication, you have to go down to the earth, to the bottom end. What kind of company are we? You can see what I mean?
Yep. And that,
the core values, the ideology, and so that's where we have to start.
I agree with you, except that that start point is definitely not going to happen in more than a handful of places, probably. So one of the difficulties I see with a lot of this new stuff is that I see it happening in many organizations where individuals have that view, and I agree with you. Try and initiate that kind of change in an organization, and it gets resisted. So you need to take it in small steps, or you need to recognize that what this is all about is change, and that's a big issue for most organizations. So I believe that you're going to still see in 10 years' time, if not more, further out, a situation like we have today, where you have organizations who are going to try and prevent people doing these things, they're going to block this. It's all to do with the interrelationship between people, control, hierarchies in companies, because all this means that your structure has to shift in the organization. Your mindset definitely has to change in what you believe you want to enable people to do. How do you trust the employees who work for you? I mean, a lot of this indicates there's low distrust out there. But that's always been the case. Doesn't mean that it always will be the case. But I believe that most people who try to go into an organization, to their own company, for instance, and talk about changing everyone, letting everyone do social this and social that is not going to work for it. It will make their jobs very hard. So what I see working in many organizations, I often talk about this myself, is small steps.
Yeah, okay.
So if you're in a place where nothing like this is going on, do something real small and then show the results of that to people who are skeptical. Find allies in the organization, understand your own organization, know who you have to form alliances with to get your ideas into action. Very few people do that. So you look at failure a lot.
But sometimes I think it's really though, because you're in this kind of a conference like Ragan stuff and so on, you're talking about, you know, content is king and context is queen, and you have to build your communities and stuff.
Yeah.
And you can have your content, you can be an excellent content provider, you can be a community provider and stuff. But what happens with your core? You really hard.
Yeah.
So if you can have a great content, a great community, but suddenly you don't have this core of your business.
Right. Well, that would necessarily follow. So if you try and do it that bit first, that won't work in most organizations. They'll resist it.
So your point of view is you can go with the content, you know, start with the content and then...
Definitely. That's recognizing reality.
Okay.
To me, it's no different than the old days back 15 years ago. I mean, I've been in lots of situations where, as a consultant, you're talking to a client, here's the goals you want to achieve. And you say, fine, we need a strategy to help that. And the client says, no, I want a newsletter. And you think, okay, that's a tactic that might help us do X, but we haven't formulated the plan yet. And yet that's what the client says he wants. And you think that's not really what he needs right now. But that's what he wants right now. And in the end, you end up doing that. And then 2 months later, you develop a strategy. You think this is back to front. But that works for that organization. Well, I see a lot of this similar to that. And it disappoints a lot of people. Yet, if you don't do it that way, nothing is likely to happen. So you end up seeing, as you do, a lot of people tinkering, experimenting, and that's terrific. A lot of mistakes being made. Great, people learn from these things. And you see a lot of successes happening too. So I tend to pay attention more to the successes than failures, because there's more failures around, that's a fact. But there are some great successes, and hence case studies, events like this, that help you see what is possible. And you hear others then talking about, you see the recognition in others, thinking, yeah, I could do this. So, okay, go back to your company. You now see what such a person has done in their company. Talk to them. Ring them up. Ask them how they did this and how they did that. And not enough people even do that. You know, you're working in one company, you hear about so-and-so in another company, so pick up the phone and call them. Drop them a note, whatever. And they usually respond. I do that all the time to people. I'm forever asking people, can I talk to you about X? What do you think about Y? You know, did you see this? I get the same people doing the same to me too. So it's great. It fosters creativity. You know, I have to rush. I've got to pack and check out and get to the venue. So, Christopher, a pleasure. So let me know when this video goes up, and I'll blog about it as well. If it's any good, I'll blog about it as well.
Yeah, it will be. I think. I'm sorry that you missed most of your breakfast.
No, that's okay. I mean, I rarely eat a lot of breakfast. I think 22 euros for each of this is outrageously expensive.
Are you back to London?
Yeah, straight after the event, I'm going to get to sleep.
What's the next step?
Weekend's coming. I'm going to take my car to the garage tomorrow, and otherwise, I'm not thinking the other weekend. I want to see my wife. We were away last week, and so. I have some work to do next week, but that's next week. So,
are you traveling a lot?
I very, very little travel these days. I do a lot of video and audio calls. So I used to do a lot of traveling. I don't miss doing that at all. There's no need to travel unless you have to.
I'll catch you in London.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
A pleasure, Christopher. Thank you. So, but let me know when you plan to do it.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and good luck with